My next project is finishing out this 1971 Bultaco motorcycle seat. The customer did an excellent job making the foam core, so now it's a matter of gluing it in place, patterning, and fitting a new cover. I'll work a small bead of cement down both sides of the pan and then set it aside until it's dry to the touch. I've set this aside to dry for 15 or 20 minutes. The adhesive is still tacky but dry to the touch. I like to start by doing a rough layout and scrap material. The backing is pretty much the same as the material I'll be using, so they match up pretty good. I'll stretch this in place and get some reference marks. I'll leave a pretty generous 1/2-inch seam allowance here. I'll snug this around the corner and lay out the mark for my seam. I'll true up these lines and again make a generous seam allowance, at least 1/2 inch. This is going to get larger as I add the next skin of foam. I'll cut this and then book match it to the other side. When I line up this template, it looks like I need to allow a little bit extra here on the foam. Alright, that'll work. Line up my front reference. Alright, we'll start shaping this edge. I've trimmed away the excess foam and left just enough there to break the edge of the rubber trim. Well, far out, this seat is ready for a cover. I started patterning the cover by cutting this back panel. Because of the way the prongs are located, there's no need to cut this curve. I'll start fitting this front by laying over this flap. I'll get it in place and mark these curves. Now I'm going to modify this original template. I've pulled it forward to where I have an allowance, a seam allowance here for the stitching. I'm going to snug it down tight over this rear corner and redraw this arc. I'll match these up and sew them in place. Well, it looks like that's going to pull down just fine. So now I'll work this cover towards the front. I'll take it back to the bench and square this off, add on a piece of vinyl, and I'll work at fitting the front. I'll pull all of this down tight and lay out my front profile. I'll book match these and sew in the end panel. Because of these offset curves, I'm going to start in the middle and sew both directions. I'll snug this cover down, and I'm marking the edge of the pan right here, and then I'll allow 1/4 inch, 3/8 or so to pull around the edge. I'll book match these, and this pattern is ready to make cover. I always start by squaring off this end cut. Make sure I get things square up through the center. Stretch out this pattern and Pin it in place with push pins, avoiding getting too deep into the underneath vinyl. Alright, I'll book match this thing one last time. Gotta give a special thanks to my son Joe for cutting this stencil and adding the finishing touch to the seat. Alright, this cover's ready to fit. Okay, I'll line up these seams and lay this over the back. I want to adjust these seams here so they lay evenly. Pull this around, straighten it up over the front. I'll use a regulator and work with these seams too. I'll work this down over the sides and adjust these back seams evenly. I'll use a regulator and turn these back to where everything is even. Alright, that'll lay down pretty good. I'll lay these seams down on the front. The owner didn't have an original cover, but he had a similar model, and it appeared that there was never any type of cording or trim used on this seat. Pretty basic. Alright, I used some contact cement to put this in place. I'll leave this about 15 or 20 minutes until it's all dried up. All right, well, that looks like a wrap on this job.